Nobody knows what happens behind the scenes of tennis matches. The applause you hear from the stands, the lights you see on television, those moments when Serena Williams lifts the trophy, it's all just window dressing. But one night, an ordinary janitor entered Serena's locker room. What he found there would change not only Serena's career forever, but his own life as well. The file in his hand had a simple name, matchpointfinal.mov. The janitor was ordinary. He walked like a man carrying the weight of middle age on his shoulders, a man whose name no one remembered, whose surname could be misspelled on payroll without anyone caring. His face always bore the trace of an unfinished sentence, as if he was always about to say something but would change his mind. His childhood had been forgotten too. He'd grown up in a small town, between concrete blocks, his only connection to sports being the tennis sounds he heard on his father's old radio. One summer day, his father had wrapped aluminum foil around the antenna trying to get better reception. "Look, son, this is how you serve," he'd said, tossing an orange into the air and catching it. The child had been listening to his mother arranging glasses in the kitchen at the time, paying no attention to the game. The only reason that moment stuck in his mind was the exhaustion in his father's eyes. When his father said, "serve," maybe he really meant life. From that day forward, tennis remained a distant hum for him. Years passed, debts accumulated, house rent, his children's notebooks, his wife's endless medications. Life narrowed a little more each day. Work became a lifeline. It didn't matter what he did. Collecting trash, mopping floors, wiping mirrors. As long as the salary hit his account at the end of the month, any job was acceptable. He'd been working behind stadiums for 10 years. While the stands erupted in cheers, he swept the corridors. While television broadcasts focused on award ceremonies, he wiped sweat stains from mirrors. While spectators applauded their heroes, he was left alone with the heroes' shadows. He never liked tennis. He'd heard Serena Williams' name, but her trophies and championships meant only overtime work to him. When someone mentioned Serena's room, the only thing that came to mind was too much sweat, too many towels, too many bottles. And that night, his name was on the list. The task was clear: clean Serena Williams' locker room. The tournament was over. The crowd in the stands had long dispersed. Trophies had been removed. Cameras had been turned off. Now only silence remained. But this wasn't ordinary silence. Every stadium has its own unique emptiness. The concrete shell that fills with thousands of voices during the day resembles a buried well at night. Your footsteps echo but don't return. The hum gets lost in the walls. As the janitor walked through the corridors, that silence was choking him. The neon lights hanging from the ceiling flickered intermittently, some trembling and going out. On the walls, there were still smiling faces on posters. Serena raising the trophy, spectators screaming under a shower of confetti. But a thin layer of dust had formed over the posters. Nobody noticed them anymore. At the end of the corridor was the security booth. Inside sat a man who'd been in the same chair for years. Purple bags under his eyes, the corners of his mouth yellowed from cigarettes. He pulled out a heavy key from the drawer. As he handed it to the janitor, he averted his eyes. "Don't linger inside too long," he said. The sentence was short but heavy as stone. The janitor laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but not a single muscle moved on the man's face. There was a brief tremor in his eyes. Then he lowered his head and lit his cigarette. The janitor took the key. The metal coldness left a numb mark in his palm. At that moment, he didn't want to hear the sentence that crossed his mind. "It's like he wanted to tell me not to go in." The path to the locker room was long. Water droplets dripping from ceiling pipes occasionally hit the ground, their echo ringing as if it came from miles away. Behind closed doors were shadows formed by abandoned belongings. A rusty racket here, a forgotten towel there. As his steps quickened, his heartbeat merged with the corridor's silence. After a while, he felt like he was listening not to his own footsteps, but to someone else's. He stopped, silence. Then he continued. He thought he heard another footstep from behind, but the corridor was empty. Every locker room door has a small sign, name, number, sometimes a country flag. Serena's name was written there. The door's metal was darker than the others, as if it had been cleaned and polished many times but had still corroded. He inserted the key into the lock, turned it. A thick silence seeped out from inside. He held his breath. When he pushed the door, the air changed. The door creaked open. Heavy, cold air seeped out from inside. When the janitor stepped in, the door slowly closed behind him, and he felt like he'd been separated from the entire stadium. At first glance, the room resembled a museum. Photos showing Serena's championship moments on the walls, miniature trophies on shelves, scattered towels and bottles on tables. But the atmosphere was wrong. It was hard to breathe. There was an invisible weight on his chest. He approached the bottles on the table. Dozens of bottles, some half full, some with open caps. The contents weren't clear. There was a murky liquid that shifted between orange and brown. When light hit it, it gave off a metallic glint, and a sharp smell hit his nose. A drop that splashed onto his glove felt like it burned his fingertip. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. He opened the garbage bag and began dumping the bottles into it. The rubbing of the plastics against each other made a brief rustling sound, but this rustling suddenly turned into a whisper, as if the bottles themselves were speaking. The word he heard was clear: "Serve." A cold shiver ran down his spine. He quickly turned his eyes to the mirrors. Mirrors covered the wall from floor to ceiling. He lifted his cloth and began wiping. At first glance, everything seemed normal, but then he noticed. His reflection wasn't making the same movements simultaneously. He raised his hand. The hand in the mirror rose a second late. He moved his eyebrows. The reflection froze, then frantically tried to catch up. The man stepped back. His heart was pounding. Suddenly, he noticed that Serena's locker door was ajar. He approached slowly. Inside were uniforms, towels, shoes, ordinary things, but at the very bottom, tucked in a corner, sat a small box. Jet black without logos. A red light on top was blinking, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The man bent down. As he reached toward the box, that hum rose again from the corner of the room. This time it was clearer, like a hoarse murmur from thousands of throats. "Serve. Serve. Serve." He froze. He lifted his head and looked in the mirror. His reflection was gone. Instead, there was a court. Serena stood at the baseline. Her face was shadowed, her eyes completely black. Her lips didn't move, but her voice echoed in the room. "I don't win." "They do." The man panicked and stepped back. The locker door slammed shut. The box's light went out. It vanished as if it had never existed. The ceiling camera had turned its lens not toward him, but toward an empty chair. An imaginary text appeared before his eyes, recording in progress. The man held his breath and ran to the door. He pressed the handle. It was locked. Just then, the phone in his pocket began to vibrate. Maat. His phone vibrated. The janitor's hand instinctively went to his pocket. The device was hot, almost burning. When he took it out, the screen opened by itself. A file he'd never downloaded appeared before his eyes. Matchpoint final.mov. His fingers didn't touch it, but the file opened by itself. The same room appeared on the screen, the same chair. But Serena was sitting in that chair. She had lowered her head, her face buried in shadows. A figure appeared beside her. It was human-shaped, but had no face. Emptiness instead of eyes, a jet-black line instead of a mouth. Worse still, it was absorbing the light around it, its shadow spreading not on the ground, but in the air. Serena raised her head. Her eyes suddenly turned black. Pupil, iris, whites. Nothing remained, only bottomless darkness. Her lips didn't move, but the room echoed with a hoarse voice. "The court is a stage. The real match is played elsewhere." The image glitched momentarily. Serena's face split into horizontal lines, then reassembled. Then a single sentence appeared on the screen. "You are now a viewer too." The man startled. He hurled the phone to the ground, but the device didn't turn off. The screen had cracked, white light spreading like veins through the breaks. The phone was still vibrating, as if the room's pulse was inside it. At that moment, the lights went out. The locker room went completely dark. Only a greenish, blurry glow remained from the mirrors. The man involuntarily looked at the mirror. He expected to see his own reflection. But Serena was there again. She was on the court. She threw the ball up, pulled the racket back. The serve began. The ball didn't go to the net. It came out of the mirror's glass. It fell to the middle of the room. The man jumped back. The rolling ball stopped at his feet. He bent down. This wasn't a tennis ball, it was the black box. The red light on it began blinking rapidly. The man panicked and ran to the door. This time the handle turned. The door opened. He burst into the corridor. The corridor was empty, but the hum following him filled the void, like thousands of spectators breathing in and out simultaneously. A chorus emanating from within the walls, "Serve! Serve! Serve!" As he ran, the posters seemed to be watching him from the walls. Serena's smiling photographs suddenly appeared as if their eyes had turned black. The lights behind him went out one by one. The ones in front flickered, showing his way but threatening to go dark at any moment. Finally, he reached the exit door. He opened it and burst outside. The cold night air hit his face. Outside the stadium, silence had fallen as if nothing existed, but the hum still echoed in his ears. When he got home, he was shaking. As soon as he closed the door, he turned off his phone, unplugged it, and left it on the table. He went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. When he opened the trash can, his heart almost stopped. The same bottles were there, half-open caps, remnants of murky orange-brown liquid inside. Yet he had packed them all into the bag in the room. He raised his head. He saw his reflection in the stainless steel of the counter, but the reflection was a face with jet-black eyes. It stared without moving. The television suddenly turned on. There was no live broadcast on the screen, but a match recording was playing. Serena was on the court. She was winning. Applause was heard. The camera turned to the stands. The spectators' eyes appeared empty and jet black. The applause sounds were rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The man grabbed the remote and turned it off, but a final glimmer remained on the screen, a red dot, a blinking recording light. When he lay down on the bed, there was a heavy pressure on his chest. He couldn't sleep. Even when he closed his eyelids, that sentence echoed in his ears. Serve, serve, serve. And at 3:33 a.m., the phone began to vibrate by itself again. Days passed. The man didn't go to work. The curtains stayed closed. Barely any light was on inside the house. But some things were always there. Those murky bottles reappearing in the kitchen trash, the black eyes in the bathroom mirror, the television turning itself on. Every time it opened, the same scene played. Serena was on the court, serving, winning. The stands were applauding, but the faces weren't normal. Jet black eye sockets, motionless mouths. The applause was in the rhythm of a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. One night he stood in front of the mirror. He couldn't see his face. No matter how hard he tried, in the mirror there was only Serena's black-eyed silhouette. Her lips didn't move, but a voice echoed in the room. The match isn't over. At that moment, his phone vibrated. The screen opened by itself. The file appeared again. Match point final dot move. It was 3:33. The file began to play, but this time the image wasn't Serena's room. It was the man's own bedroom. The camera angle was right from the doorway threshold. In the image, he was sleeping, and at the foot of the bed, Serena sat motionless. The man startled and threw the phone away, but the image was projected onto the wall, as if the room, not the screen, had become the recording device. Serena raised her head, her eyes completely black. Without her lips moving, the sound echoed throughout the house. "You're no longer in the stands. You're in the game." The man looked in the mirror. He expected to see Serena, but this time he saw his own body. He was on the court. The spotlight was on him. He had a racket in his hand. He clenched his fists, his knuckles white. A hoarse hum rose from the stands, then turned into a single voice. "Serve, serve, serve." The racket strings were blood red. They shone as if wet. The man wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Serena in the mirror smiled. She tilted her head to the side, waiting for him to throw the ball up. The man raised the racket. Above his shoulders, the stand's hum swelled like an ominous sea. The moment his eyes met the black eyes in the mirror, the phone screen went completely dark, and a single sentence appeared in white letters. "The match continues." No one heard from him after that day. He neither returned to work nor to his home. Neighbors said his lights flickered throughout the night. His wife called the police, but the security cameras said no recording. New tournaments began. Serena took the court again. She won again. But some spectators said they saw empty-eyed, strange faces in the stands at certain moments. In the crowd that applauded, shouted, and cheered, one face was different from the others. Eyes jet black, lips closed like a line. A red dot blinked momentarily on the broadcast's lower band, and only those who looked carefully could see. Match point, final dot move, and the end of the sentence seeped onto the screen. Simple, harsh, definitive. The match continues.